Well, good morning. Again, my name is Kimberly Plessel, and I'm the dietitian for Oakdale OBGYN. I've been with them for about 2.5 years now, and it's just nice to see some of familiar faces. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk a little bit about how to eat and nourish your body for strength and power as we age. I'm always motivated by this first photo. If only I could do that in my 40s right now. And so we all have something to aspire to. And you know, there's a lot of different health goals that we come into this room today with. And so I kind of encourage you to put that lens on, you know, everything that I'm going to be presenting today. You know, think about what are your overall health goals and how can you tease out 1 or 2 strategies today to kind of deepen and build your approach to live well. So I really think that knowledge equals opportunity. So there's going to be a lot of different strategies that I'm going to introduce today, and hopefully you'll take away at least one that you may be able to build upon. I'm sure that several of you are doing many of these strategies already, and so I really like to work with people on a one-on-one basis because then you really get that customized and personalized care. So a lot of us, you know, maybe, you know, over age 35, and something that naturally happens with age is that we slowly lose our muscle mass. And so really the goal becomes, to kind of keep as much muscle as we can after the age of 35. And so a lot of times when you're looking at that perimenopausal time, or if you postmenopausal, there's this window where it all of a sudden becomes really difficult to kind of manage our weight. So if we're not going to go have our colonoscopies every other week, then it becomes, you know, looking at things differently. Are you doing anything to kind of preserve your muscle mass? Because a pound of muscle on our bodies needs 30 calories a day to live. Now, how many want to guess how much a pound of fat requires for survival? 2. So a lot of times in our 40s, what's happening is we're slowly shifting what we're made up of. Your weight may not be changing at all, but you can kind of notice that you don't look as strong, or that, you know, that things are shifting, and a lot of it's this initial body composition change. So we're losing muscle, we're slowly gaining fat, and then all of a sudden our metabolism just can't keep up with what we're used to being able to eat. And that's actually something that a lot of my clients come in and say it's so much more difficult now than it's ever been before. And so a lot of times what we have to look at is, are they strength training? How are you eating to preserve your muscle mass? And so there's a lot of different reasons besides just age why we may be losing muscle. Definitely I've worked with some really young women who are hospitalized for any length of time, and that's a time where, you know, because of illness or certain disease states, that they really lose some of their lean muscle mass. Otherwise, sometimes, you know, looking at just the hormonal impacts and how we're going to slowly lose muscle as we move into our 50s and beyond. And today we're going to talk about how nutrition can really support you, or maybe slightly, you know, work against you. And so kind of looking at what your general patterns are and how do you just make small shifts to really maximize that for yourself. So how do we save our strength? I'm actively trying to do this as well with you. So I've never put as much focus on this until I've been in my 40s. I've always historically loved my cardiovascular exercise. It's my stress reduction. I'm finally making time to strength train. So we're so excited to have Sheree with us, our physical therapist. She's going to give us some great tips on how to do this safely. And so it's important to know that our muscle is always constantly changing. We're always making and breaking muscle. And it's interesting because we make a muscle tissue from the nutrients after we eat. And so I have some patients that they only like to eat once a day, or they're only eating twice a day. Well, you know, you're breaking down muscle in between your meals. So sometimes the very first strategy to keep it simple is just trying to get someone to eat consistently throughout the day. A lot of us can numb our hunger signals through coffee, diet sodas, you know, stress, work. You know, a lot of times if you ever feel like, oh, I wasn't hungry all day and then all of a sudden it hit, well, that's not really going to be a pattern over time that's going to help you sustain your muscle and meet all of your health goals. So sometimes, you know, it's a matter of reconnecting to our intuitive cues and knowing why or why not am I hearing those cues. So today we're going to talk about how do we stage your approach. We are going to eat to build, and then we're going to be smart about the way we distribute the proteins in our diet. We're talking about variety because I'm a true foodie. I love to eat, and I want to make sure that you get to have lots of fun foods and you don't feel like you have to leave and eat chicken salad for the rest of your life. And then lastly, we're just going to touch on the importance of strength training. So how much? How do we tip the balance to building and kind of synthesizing muscle versus breaking it down? This is actually the first part of looking at what your nutrients are made up of. It's based on your weight. So a lot of times the very first nutrient I kind of estimate for a client is their protein needs, because I take their weight, I look at their health history, I try to put everything in the perspective and looking at their personal goals. But a benchmark to kind of at least get you grounded today is it's about your weight divided in half. That's about how many grams of protein you need a day. And now if you're trying to build, or if you've come off of a hospitalization, or if you're coming off of some kind of chronic illness where you've lost your muscle mass, then you might need a little bit more. And so kind of at least 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So a little bit of math early in the morning on the weekend, so not too bad. So at least we'll just start with divide your weight in half and at least kind of think that as we go forward through this talk to know if you're meeting your protein needs or not. So I'll talk a little bit about how much protein is in food in a moment. And so part of this, the hard part here is that, your skeletal muscle isn't always going to respond to really low doses. So it's really being smart about how do I eat just enough for my physical needs without overdoing or underdoing. So what's just enough? Okay, so 1 almond is not enough. And I know a lot of times when we're busy, a lot of us are mothers or grandmothers, and we're tired. I completely understand. I love to cook, but there's a lot of nights I am too tired and I don't really want to worry about it. So historically, I have some clients say, well, I'm just going to grab a bowl of cereal, or I'm just going to snack on some crackers. And so sometimes I'm going to bring some creative snacks for you today that kind of help you boost the protein and expose you to some different flavors. And so we're going to have some roasted chickpeas in about 4 or 5 different flavors for you to try. Because it's all about finding easy products that fit for your lifestyle. Now, do you need to be eating the 10-ounce steak? No. And so it's really kind of finding that sweet spot right in the middle. So your body can absorb and use about 28 to 30 grams of protein at one time. There's 7 grams of protein in 1 ounce of meat. So it kind of goes back to that deck of cards. The deck of cards is about 3 ounces, so about 1 1/3 of deck of cards is 4 ounces of meat if you're a meat eater. That's going to give you that 28 grams. So again, it's kind of looking at how do I distribute it throughout my day. So ideally, we would hit at least 20 grams of protein, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, up to about 30 grams, because after 30, you're probably not going to be able to absorb it and use it. And so you don't need to be reacting with protein. Obviously, if you have a history of cancer in your family, I don't want you to be eating tons and tons of animal meat. But when you're looking at vegetarian and animal sources, you're kind of looking for that sweet spot of about 20 to 30 grams per meal. What time of day do you think most Americans improve on their protein intake? I'm giving you a hint with the photo. Breakfast, especially if you have children that you're feeding in your house and trying to get them to sustain until they hit their lunch hour, 6 hours or 5 hours later. The cereal aisle can be pretty daunting for a lot of people. If you are a cereal eater, there's a great app called Fooducate Plus or Food Scores by the Environmental Working Group. They actually rank different products on the shelves and can help you find healthier versions. Yes? Fooducate. So instead of educate, Fooducate. And the other one is called Food Scores. Food Scores. Yes, and so you can actually go in with your smartphone and scan the barcodes of products, and you can look for healthier alternatives while you're shopping. If you have kids or grandchildren with you, you might do it as a little homework before you go in the store, because usually if I have my children, I'm moving. If I go too slow, they start pulling stuff off that they want, and I try to go alone. Because really breakfast is the time of day that most of us can really improve. You know, breakfast, if you look at these 4 different examples, the calories are relatively the same. You know, a lot of times we focus on calorie intake, but we're not really looking at the nutrient density of our choices, kind of like what's the quality of what we're eating. So you could have as low as 3 grams of protein all the way up to 33, depending on the types of food that you choose at your breakfast meal. Now, you don't have to have eggs every morning to be able to meet your protein needs. So this is an example of how you can take some standard breakfasts and kind of give some protein boosts. And there's a lot of different fun ways to do this, and I love hearing ideas from my clients, because then I go home and my husband's like, well, who did you talk to that we're trying something? You know, we expand our variety all the time because so many of you have great ideas, and it's nice to kind of compile a big database of options. So an example for eggs, you know, sometimes if you're tired of just doing scrambled eggs or hard-boiled eggs, you can make it into, you know, some kind of egg scramble. Some like a ranchero version, they can throw beans in, so they're adding protein in from the beans and the eggs. I have a great recipe for these little egg muffins on the bottom left corner, where you just pretty much scramble, you know, or mix up some eggs, put it in a muffin tin, and then just throw in your favorite mix-ins. So it might, you know, a lot of us in our household, we all have different flavors that we enjoy, so I let my kids do their own mix-ins based on what vegetables they like. And then we just have to make sure we don't turn the pan as we put it in the oven. Otherwise we get the egg surprise. Because they're pretty creative in their concoctions. And so if you have kids, I really encourage you, you know, or grandchildren also. I love it when my mother-in-law or my mother get creative with nutrition with my kids also. I mean, that's just another touch point of the importance of feeding ourselves well. And so kind of using some of those. Sometimes cottage cheese. Nancy's is a great brand out of Whole Foods. It's very low sodium if you're concerned about blood pressure. So Nancy's yogurt.
What kind was that?
Nancy's.
N-A-N-C.
Just like my mother's name, yes. And so that's a really nice brand. I have a gentleman I'm working with right now who switched over. He's been able to cut his sodium intake in half just by the brands of the foods that he's been choosing. And so Nancy's is really nice for cottage cheese. You can also, you know, if you're an oatmeal lover, especially if you go into the winter time, think about mixing in the hemp seeds. I brought some samples today so that you could try it. So if you didn't take any, I'm going to encourage you to go back and try a little bit of the hemp seeds, because a tablespoon of hemp seeds is going to give you 3 more grams of protein that you can throw into your oatmeal or even on top of your yogurts. Obviously, Greek yogurt is a great option. I had a nice conversation with some ladies in line as we were getting our yogurt, and she mentioned that the Greek was a little bit sour, and I said, well, one tip that I do is I take Greek yogurt that's plain, so usually like a Fage. You can buy it in bulk at Costco or at some of the major grocery stores. And then I take the flavored yogurt. Usually I use Stonyfield, but there's many great brands, and then I mix them. Because then that way you get just a little bit of the sweet, but you're not hit with so much sugar. And so I actually do this for my kids in their lunch. I sit there and I kind of start scooping while they're not looking, and then I mix it together. So they're used to a kind of a mix of Greek for the protein, but then you're going to get more calcium from the plain yogurt, or if you have a flavored yogurt that you're just trying to add a little bit of sweetness in, but not have it overpower your breakfast. Also, if you're a coffee drinker and you actually put milk in it, don't forget to count the protein there. I actively include that in mine. So what is it about the dairy that helps with muscle growth? Actually, you know, whey protein is really useful for building muscle. So if you're actively trying to kind of rebuild, there's an amino acid or a building block that's part of these protein molecules, which is leucine, and that is the master regulator. And there's a couple really good protein powders. If you want something quick, or if you just want a backup, or you want to incorporate this into your daily routine, but I really like the Isopure, Tara's Whey, and Jarrow. And so you can, again, check in with Food Scores or Fuducate. They'll actually help you navigate that. But there's so many products on the shelves, it gets really daunting to go in and figure out, where do I start? Yes?
You're suggesting the whey protein?
The whey protein. Unless you have, I mean, the dairy intolerances a lot of times are going to be linked to the casein portion of the dairy. So if someone is dairy intolerant, then obviously there's rice, there's pea proteins, there's other options, and those work also.
Okay, that's what.
Yes, they definitely work. And so again, you have to look at the whole person and kind of look at what's going to work best for them.
Where do you buy these products?
I usually look on VitaCost for a lot of discounted products. So you can get protein powders and supplements a lot of times on VitaCost online. Amazon carries several products as well. Otherwise, you can also go to the website of the manufacturer, and I usually list where they're offered at.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes?
Is this something you recommend if you are an extreme workout person or just starting to kind of get into a little bit here and there? Is that something that we should be doing to help build?
It's expensive, and so it's definitely an investment. I mean, these are going to run $30 to $40. I do believe you can meet all of your needs with whole foods. I usually try to work and start with someone eating real whole foods to get all of their nutrients. I am a firm believer that Mother Nature does best. We try, but I do think that you can get it through whole foods. I think this is a nice backup for someone who's just finding that they've tried going the whole food route and they still just can't get into the rhythm, or their life is just too stressful. They need something that's easy. I also have people who are actively, bodybuilding, and they need that
Associated with
yes, and
people who are really active in the bodybuilding or whatever, big time workout people need this to help.
yeah.
This is even if you're not really.
If you're not eating your protein, it's a nice, easy resource for people. Yes. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood you right with the plant. If it's a plant-based protein powder, that does still.
You're still going to get good benefits. Yes. It's just that a lot of times leucine is really known to help build muscle, and so you can opt for a wide variety. I mean, obviously there's food intolerances, and you have to be flexible.
Lactose in our house. So
Yes. So you can use the pea protein powders. You can use the rice protein powders. Look for a good brand, through one of the resources that I had mentioned. But again, you can get everything from food too. It's a matter of looking at what's your routine and your rhythm, and how do we kind of set you up for success. I don't personally use protein powders in my house. I love Greek yogurt, and so we use a lot of Greek yogurt. I use a lot of eggs. I use a lot of beans, edamame, and these really tasty chickpea snacks that you'll get to sample in a few minutes. So,
do fava beans have anything similar to the chickpeas?
I actually brought fava bean samples too. Yes. Yes.
There was just a recent article that older women tend to absorb protein better from the whey source.
Right.
Batira's whey target has fantastic sales on it.
Great. Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Really good sales on it.
Oh, and one thing before I move on, I'm sorry. One thing to remember is we're trying to navigate many goals, right? So a lot of times when someone comes in to work with me, it's trying to stage this and kind of prioritize what's the major goal, what's going to really help them start off on, this really productive, sustainable path. One thing to remember is as we age, we don't necessarily feel full when we drink our calories. So if someone also has a goal of weight loss, I have to kind of bridge that. It may not impact them. They may be able to drink something and feel satiated, but research in general has shown that I wish I was part of this study. They gave them milkshakes. I was like, I'll volunteer. And what they did is they had volunteers drink milkshakes, and then what they did is they gave some milkshakes 100 calories, other ones were about 400, and they went on to see, did people downregulate what they ate later? And they didn't. So a lot of times if you're also striving for weight loss, the general research has shown that you feel your satiety more when you eat your food. Did you have a question?
Yeah, how do you know, you're showing me us three, but there seems to be a great price difference in whey proteins.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know that, this isn't a good one, I don't want to get this?
Again, one of the best tools that I found that's so easy is going to be the food scores. I mean, Environmental Working Group came out with this program just a year ago, and they have thousands of products listed. Their app is not working great right now, and I don't understand why it's crashing for me. So I actually go on the web and go to there, and what I do is you can enter a food product that you're specifically looking for. So you can look for pasta sauce, and then it'll rank everything. And the beauty of food scores is it ranks it based on how the food is processed, the nutritional value, and the ingredients. So it gives you a really nice perspective, because some people are really trying to minimize additives, right? Because they're having some kind of food intolerance to the additives in certain foods. Other people are looking at really wanting to go organic and looking at the nutrition ingredients. So it really helps you, again, prioritize what's going to work best for you.
So it's just foodscores.com?
.org.
.org.
Yes, .org. Environmental Working Group. So again, variety is going to be our spice of life. And so if you're thinking, okay, I'm aiming for at least 20 grams of protein, that's about 3 ounces of meat, right, 21. Up to about 30 grams of protein, it's about 4 ounces of meat. But look at all the different foods that are an option here. You can get protein. It hides in some small amounts in vegetables, which a lot of people don't realize. We've got lentil-based pasta. Now, who has tried the lentil-based pasta? What did you think?
I loved it.
I love it, yes. And you liked it also? Yeah, the top right. So Tolerance or Udo's is sold. Now, lentil-based pasta is not cheap. So, I mean, it's an $8 box of noodles. And so if you can go online or you can go to Costco to be able to try this, that's a much more affordable path. I'm trying to encourage my children to eat more lentils, and so I've tried some of these boxes, but I definitely hold out for, when things go on sale. So they are going to be a little bit pricier. But again, if it's just you eating it, it's going to last you quite a while because it doesn't take very much. And I just put olive oil, some fresh tomato, a little bit of fresh herbs, and I eat it like that, And so it's kind of nice because you get that noodle fix. And you still are making headway towards your protein goals.
Great for anyone who has celiac.
Yes, and that's actually one reason why we're doing it, is we're trying to have a little bit lower gluten, so they're gluten-free. And then that way, they're wonderful products. They're organic. I mean, it's a great way to work in some beans without feeling like you have to eat beans. So the key points around maintaining our lean muscle mass is really make sure, number one, you're eating enough. Most of us are. Most Americans eat enough protein to meet their needs. The women that I worry the most about are women living on their own and if they're over the age of 70. Then I really start looking closely to make sure that they're eating protein-rich foods throughout their day, especially in the evenings. We're going to span it out. We're going to have some fun and be able to try a couple samples today. And remember, you're working so hard to put the fuel in, you have to use it. So you won't build muscle if you're not strength training. And Sheree is going to gently introduce this. It doesn't mean we need to be at the gym and we don't need to be lifting, interesting machines, but we do need to find a creative way to be able to keep our muscle mass, especially as we age, because that's going to help with balance and quality of life.
Can you get too much protein?
Yes. So that would depend on your individual needs. I mean, the kidneys are very good about clearing protein. But if you have compromised kidney function, you have to be careful. So then what we do is we just really dial in and make sure you're getting adequate amounts without overdoing. So as we're trying to save our muscle, we're actually going to be saving bone, which I know is a huge importance as we go through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. Because the skeletal muscle is going to actually pull against the bone and help it rebuild and become denser. So yes, it's somewhat normal to lose a little bone as we age, but we are going to work against this process as best we can, right? So this graph probably looks similar. It looks similar to the muscle mass declining with age, doesn't it? I mean, it's interesting that they coincide.
I've got a question. If you have been diagnosed as having osteoporosis, can you rebuild that, or is it totally irreversible?
You know, bone is always remodeling, and some of the medications, which Dr. Martini may be able to speak better to than I can, you know, are focusing on slowing down the breakdown of bone. So we want to make sure we have enough nutrients. This would be a real individual question with your physician, just kind of see what we're able to do. So part of it is you have to make sure that you're putting in the nutrients to build the bone, but some of the medications actually work by slowing down the remodeling or the breakdown of it. And so that would be a great conversation to have with your physician and kind of make sure that the medications are meeting your needs. So you can see on the left is healthy bone and on the right is osteoporosis. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep our bones as dense as we can as we age. So which foods are really good for bones? Several of you, has anyone heard any conflicting nutrition studies in the media ever? I know. So part of this is, you know, I love this visual. So you have to think about nutrition like a tapestry, a beautiful tapestry. And each study is one weave, okay? But you have to back up to see all of the studies in their entirety to really get a comprehensive look at the field of nutrition. You let your dietitians kind of navigate through all these ongoing studies, but you know, the media has a way of really highlighting controversial topics. And it's good that we're aware, but again, try to back up and see the studies for what they are. Some are really well done, some could be done better, and we have to kind of keep it in the context of the overall research to date. So one of the great debates in the nutrition world has been the role of protein, which I've just actively encouraged you to eat, on the impact of bone. And so what they found is that when you consume protein and high amounts of protein, it actually leads to a loss of calcium in your urine. So a lot of people got concerned about overdoing protein because they were trying to protect their bones. Well, the good news is that that is actually offset what we've learned since then. You absorb better the calcium in the gut. So even though protein is going to cause some urinary loss of calcium, the protein helps you absorb it better in the gut, so it's a wash, in essence. So that tries to get at some of the studies that you may or may not have heard over the last several years. What they found is there's one key component to maximize what protein can do for your bones, and that is calcium. And what they found is that when you have high protein intake, an inadequate calcium intake, you lose bone. When you have high protein intake and inadequate calcium, you lose bone. When you have high protein intake and you have adequate calcium, enough calcium in your diet, you protect your bones. The calcium is huge. And so, you know, what they found in this study is you can kind of see the risk of fractures goes up when the calcium intake is less than 800 milligrams a day. The fracture intake is low with high protein intake when you're consuming more than 800. And, oh, sorry.
Which way? Okay, so being below the graph is good.
Yep, you want a low fracture risk.
Oh, I see, that's what.
Yes. And part of this, you know, and we'll talk about what the calcium goals are for our age groups, is to kind of realize, you know, it's making sure you have enough calcium. But again, any of you that have come to several of these talks or know me in our individual consults, I push vegetables all the time. And so part of it is, again, don't forget about the power of the alkali-rich fruits and vegetables to kind of offset the protein impacts in the gut. So you want to make sure that we still don't forget the power of, you know, a lot of these other nutrients. Vegetables will make your body a little bit more alkaline, where protein's a little bit more acidic. And so this, again, helps you to protect your bones. So it's always kind of looking at, you know, there's actually a really interesting book by Amy Lanau. It's a few years old. And she was looking at the acidity of the diet versus the alkalinity of the diet. And so I had a client that was really trying to do this whole foods based as possible, and he was bringing the protein down actually at that time and trying to have a really alkaline diet to kind of protect his bones. And so there's a lot of different arguments on this issue. The number one thing is adequate protein, adequate calcium, and make sure you eat plenty of vegetables. That's going to be the best approach to saving your bone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know, I've got the
I can get it for you, yes. And so, 38% of us are not eating enough calcium. And so, we just need to be really clear on what's your typical pattern. Are you really getting enough calcium in your diet? I was actually surprised. I love Siggy yogurt. I love their brand, and I eat it regularly. And I went to go look at my calcium intake because I came in for my Oakdale OBGYN annual exam and had that conversation with my provider. And I was actually surprised. There's only 150 milligrams of calcium in my Siggy yogurt. And here, most yogurts can be upwards of 300 milligrams of calcium. And so you do have to kind of look at the labels. We're aiming for 1,000 milligrams if you're 50 or younger, and at least 1,200 if you're over 50, up to 1,500. You risk kidney stones when you get to 2,500 milligrams of calcium or more a day. So you're kind of looking for about 1,200 up to 1,500. So what you can do is look at the labels, some of your favorite foods, and what you're going to do is you're always looking at the serving size because then you'll know how much calcium is in that serving size. But you come down and you'll see a percentage. You'll see 10%, 20%. That's actually based on the recommended daily value, which is 1,000 milligrams for women less than 50. So you just remove the percentage sign and put a 0, and that's how many milligrams of calcium are in that food product. So sometimes that's a nice way to look at it, and just spot check some of the products in your house and just kind of get an idea of, well, how much calcium am I really consuming? Can
you say that again, like
remove the percentage sign and replace it with the 0. So 10% is 100 milligrams, 20% is 200 milligrams of calcium. It makes it a lot easier. And again, let's span it out. Let's be creative. Calcium is found in a lot of different foods. We're going to find it in our greens. We're going to find it in our canned fish. We're going to find it in some of my clients who are dairy-free in some of their almond milks or soy milks. We're going to find it in tofu. It's in a lot of different great options. So you can definitely be creative in the food choices that you make. There's a couple key points I'm going to touch on. When you're eating, let's say you're really great about your wheat bran. Wheat bran has something in it called phytates that actually interfere with calcium absorption. So you kind of want to span out. If you're really big on wheat bran, span that out from your calcium intake for a couple hours because you'll absorb your calcium better. If you soak your beans, that brings down these phytates as well. Soaking your beans and your nuts is a wonderful practice. And then for the greens a lot of times have something called oxalates in them, and that can interfere with calcium absorption. So a lot of times if you steam your greens, that will help bring down the oxalate content of them, and that helps you absorb your calcium from your dark leafy greens. So one practice I've been doing is making, scrambled eggs, and then I'll saute a whole lot of kale and some fresh tomatoes and a little olive oil. It's a wonderful, easy dinner. It's an easy lunch. It can be simple. It doesn't have to mean that you have to be in the kitchen for hours to meet your goals. And of course, let's mindfully savor. Some of the foods that we all know are going to kind of diminish our bone health. So the alcohol, the coffee, the teas, the soft drinks. I know. So today I did bring some supplements. If you find that you're just not consistent or you want to kind of add in a supplement daily if you're finding that you're not meeting your goals, I love the Adora calcium supplements. I know I've brought these before at a previous talk. They're dark chocolate discs. And so dessert, now don't let the kids get into these, obviously, that you don't want them taking in too much calcium. Ideally, you'd only be needing 1 calcium pill a day. The rest of it, hopefully, we're getting from your food. And so, again, span it out for maximal absorption. And if you are taking proton pump inhibitor medications for reflux, your stomach acid is probably low. So you really want to look for calcium citrate because that's going to be absorbed better if you are actively taking something for reflux. And don't forget about your D. We heard about the importance of that. And I'm just going to kind of move through here. Pretty much, the ideal blood ranges vary quite a bit. The going consensus is if you get your blood levels checked, you want it between 30 and 40. That's the general consensus right now. Definitely right now would be interesting as we're moving into winter to know what your baseline effect is. If you are low, then that way you can kind of add in a supplement now so that you don't dip really low during the winter months. November through April is the lowest vitamin D kind of production time for us in Minnesota. So either check it in the fall or check it in the spring, you know, and kind of get an idea of what does my body typically do during the different seasons and how do I work with this. I love the Carlson drops for vitamin D because you can titrate it up. A lot of you, if you are taking protein powders or you've got a multivitamin, vitamin D can hide in a lot of different products that we have in our homes. So a lot of my patients, I ask them to take pictures and email me all of their supplements because I'm looking to make sure that we aren't over supplementing anything and that there's not something hiding in the different preparations that they're consuming. So the vitamin D drops are nice because you can just drop it into a glass of water, you know, and so you can kind of titrate it up to what you need a day. And then lastly, you know, just remember vitamin D is huge for overall health. Vitamin D is going to be absorbed better with magnesium, vitamin K, and vitamin A. And so again, I would be looking at your food recalls and your lifestyle patterns to make sure that you're getting adequate intake of these key nutrients. They all work in a synergistic way. You can never isolate one nutrient and maximize its benefits. These are meant to work together. And so, you know, one example is if you're getting chronic muscle cramps, and you're low in vitamin D, you probably need more magnesium. And so that's an example of if you have, you know, chronic muscle, you know, talk with your physician. If you have restless leg syndrome, it could be, you know, magnesium is involved in over 300 reactions in your body every single day. So if you are deficient in magnesium, you're getting muscle cramps, and you find that you're low in vitamin D, one of the key strategies I would work with you on is to make sure that we boost up some of your magnesium intake through really good whole food sources, and then if we need to, the supplements as well. So here's a picture of just where we're kind of exploring nuts and whole grains, avocado, dark chocolate. So while working some fun. And just remember, strength and health are multifactorial. Each one of us is a unique person. So today I've introduced quite a few concepts. Some of them you may actively be doing. So hopefully you heard one pearl that you can kind of build upon. But again, you have to keep this in context of your overall health. And so it's really great if we can personalize and customize your plan based on your lifestyle, your body. And so just remember that, you know, there's a couple of different strategies. I encourage you to pick one thing to focus on, always just one, because then you'll succeed, and then we can always add on another one later. And you know, really kind of see how strong we can be throughout all the different seasons of our life, and really looking at sustainability. So if you'd like some more support, I'll certainly be here the rest of today, and you can also email me at oakdaleobgyn.com. Thank you.